Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Tata Katipaya Hobhir Vidyayedha Manogatihi Jagama Deva Devasya Shesasya Charanantikam Tata Katipaya Hobhir Vidyayedha Manogati Jagama Deva Devasya Seshasya Charanantikam Tata Katipaya Hobhir Vidyayedha Manogatihi Jagama Deva Devasya Seshasya Charanantikam Tata thereafter Katipaya Ahobhi within a few days Vidyaya by the spiritual mantra Idha Managati the course of his mind being enlightened Jagama went Deva Devasya of the master of all other lords or demigods Seshasya Lord Sesha Charana Antikam to the shelter of the lotus feet. Translation. Thereafter, within a very few days, by the influence of the mantra that Chitraketu had practiced, his mind became increasingly enlightened in spiritual progress, and he attained shelter at the lotus feet of Anantadev. Purport. A devotee's ultimate achievement is to take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord in any one of the planets in the spiritual sky. As a result of the rigid execution of devotional service, a devotee receives all material opulences if these are required. Otherwise, the devotee is not interested in material opulences, nor does the Supreme Lord award them. When a devotee is actually engaged in the devotional service of the Lord, his apparently material opulences are not material. They are all spiritual. For example, if a devotee spends money to construct a beautiful and costly temple, the construction is not material but spiritual. Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe Yuktam Vairagyam Uchate. A devotee's mind is never diverted to the material side of the temple. The bricks, stone, and wood used in the construction of the temple are spiritual, just as the deity, although made of stone, is not stone but the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. The more one advances in spiritual consciousness, the more he can understand the elements of devotional service. Nothing in devotional service is material. Everything is spiritual. Consequently, a devotee is awarded so-called material opulence for spiritual advancement. This opulence is an aid to help the devotee advance towards the spiritual kingdom. Thus, Maharaj Chitraketu remained in the material opulence as a Vidyadhara Pati, master of the Vidyadharas. And by executing devotional service, he became perfect within a very few days and returned home, back to Godhead, taking shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, Sesha, Ananta. A karmi's material opulence and a devotee's material opulence are not on the same level. Srila Madhvacharya comments in this way. Anyantaryam inam Vishnum upashyanam samipaga bhaved yogyataya tasya param va prapnuyan nara. By worshipping Lord Vishnu, one can get whatever he desires. But a pure devotee never asks Lord Vishnu for any material profit. Instead, he serves Lord Vishnu without material desires and is therefore ultimately transferred to the spiritual kingdom. In this regard, Srila Vairagavacharya comments, Yateshta gatir ityartha. By worshipping Lord Vishnu, a devotee can get whatever he likes. Maharaj Chitraketu wanted only to return home back to Godhead, and therefore he achieved success in that way. So we're seeing here Maharaj Chitraketu's progress. So this process is a spiritual process, but because of everything's connection to the Lord, it also includes all the material facilities, whatever's required. It's not that it's a separate endeavor. That's the important thing, is that there's no separate endeavor. One's performing one's service and duties within Krishna consciousness already generates the facilities one requires. Sometimes it is falsely thought that, well, I have my sadhana and my devotional activities, then I have, my practical life. But in reality, this is a misunderstanding of what you're dealing with. Right? In actuality, what you're dealing with is Krishna's creation. And his energies are always working for his service. So now, either we are working with the material energy, being controlled by it, and so Maya is arranging everything to please Krishna, right? By involving the living entity in the material world according to their desire. Or if the living entity wants to please Krishna, then that same facility is there for serving the Lord. It doesn't change. It's just a matter of whether we're aware of it or not, whether it is a matter of I'm doing this, so therefore I deserve the results, or I'm serving Krishna, and then Krishna takes care. So the difference is only in consciousness. There is no mechanical difference like that. It's thought that way because since time immemorial we identify that I'm the controller and enjoyer, so we're quite comfortable that I did the work, I get the result. So, but as being pointed out here, Prabhupada's pointing out, is no, when the devotee performs his duties in Krishna consciousness, right, then that performance of the duties generates whatever he requires. So if something's required in devotional service, it comes. If it's not required, even though technically by the activity you would get something for it, it doesn't necessarily have to come if the devotee's not interested. Or does that make sense? Right. But things that are required, those come. So it's up to Krishna. We're not dealing with Maya here. We're dealing with Krishna. Devotional service deals with Krishna. It's not an arrangement of Maya. So the devotee should understand that whatever one has, that's by Krishna's grace. Not I worked hard, I got all this. No, it's by Krishna's grace we got whatever we got. Right? And so, like that, it functions. So we see Maharaj Chitraketu then being instructed by Narad Muni. He was taking advantage of that, had understood this, and now is applying it within devotional service. So this application of devotional service, then we see as a byproduct, then he gets lordship over the Vidyadhara Loka, just by chanting his mantra. Right? We also see Gopakumar got whatever it is was necessary, desired, simply by chanting the mantra. So this always applies. Other things you can add to the chanting in the other ages. In this age, then predominantly it's just the chanting itself. So this chanting, then this is what makes everything work. By following the order of the spiritual master, by practicing what they say rigidly to try to please Krishna, then everything, whatever's required comes. It also mentions rigidly, not just whenever you feel like it. Because otherwise then you kind of get whatever necessary whenever someone else feels like it. Right? So it's rigidly following. Then one gets the blessings of the spiritual master. By that you get the blessings of Krishna. Then by that you're going to get devotional service. Right? So therefore, his position is not amazing. It's not something important. It's not a separate endeavor. In other words, the main endeavor should be how to perform one's devotional activities with the right attitude. And if you're focusing on that, how to do that nicely, everything else will come. Krishna gives the intelligence. If you can do something with some skill that requires intelligence, that comes from Krishna, it's not from us. Somebody practices one thing, they get no results. Another practices the same thing, they get so much results. Someone else practices even less and gets even more than the other two. Why? So it's not us. The illusion is it's us. And that's why then we take it so seriously. Someone has something, someone doesn't have something. It's just Krishna's arrangement. That's all. But we're not supposed to be focusing on that. We're supposed to be focusing on developing love for Krishna. That's the aspect we should be focusing on. The other things Krishna will take care of. One can say, well, that's naive, you have to work. But the point is what has Prabhupada just said here 1,000,000 times? Perform your duties. Now, this is where the rub is. When you come to the Western environment, anything below aristocracy or nobility, the concept of duty does not exist. So in other words, this concept, if we were preaching this before, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, people immediately understand because you had that aspect in society. But in the contemporary society, basically in World War I, we got rid of all that, you know? Finally. Right? Only took a few thousand years. But whatever, they got rid of it. But now the concept that you do your duty, it includes everything, is not understood. Who needs facility as far as a lot of material facility goes? Grihastas. Why will they get the facility from doing their work? What work will they do according to their nature? Right? Why will they be doing that work? Because that's their duty as a grihasta. So when Prabhupada says, the Shastra says, perform your duties to please Krishna, it means all those things that we think have nothing to do with devotional service. The concept that you have an occupation, you work, you get facility, from that comes from Krishna. It does not come from the modern society. It comes from Krishna. Right? Do we ever see any starving brahmacharis? No. Why? Because they're performing their duties. Right? And if you look at it, there's no starving grihastas either. Right? Because they perform their duties. So that's the whole thing, is that this understanding that you perform your duties, that already includes the secondary aspect, because we're focused on the primary of pleasing Krishna. The secondary is just something you do. You cook, you have to wash pots, you have to, cut vegetables, you have to go to the market, but the focus is not on that. Someone who's a kitchen assistant focuses on that. Kitchen manager focuses on that. The guy who goes to the market focuses on that. But the cook is on cooking. Right? On the primary aspect. And the secondary aspect makes it work very nicely. But in the material context, we look at the secondary as the all in all. And we think that that's what makes everything happen. Here, he's chanting his mantra according to the direction of his guru. He has all facility. Nowadays, devotees turn to self-help books. Some karmi is going to help them make the money, and I don't see anybody making any more money. I do not see that great opulence that devotees are thinking they'll get from following a material path. If it was, devotees would be all doing it by now, right? It started in the 90s. They'd be doing it by now. 20 years, you'd think everybody would be a millionaire. Is it happening? No, because that's not how it's going to happen. Even the guy who's writing the book and doing all these things and making the millions, it's not coming from what he's doing now. It's coming from what he did before. He performed his duties. Now he's getting the money. Last life he performed his duties. This life he's getting the money. This life he's not doing his duties. Next life he won't have the money. All right? Does that make sense? Last life he followed the Vedic culture. This life he gets the money. Right? And writes a book. Next life, he reads that book and still doesn't get any money. Right? You understand? So like that. We have to understand that Krishna's in control. We just have to know is we have to do our duties. That's why it says we do it very seriously, rigidly. So that means the Grihastha, he follows his duties nicely. He makes the endeavor to the best of his ability within the context of his nature and situation to make his money. Why? Because that's what Grihasthas are supposed to do. Right? That's what it says in Shastra. But we're thinking, no, I have to be practical and do this. Devotional service doesn't deal with this. That's because the parts of devotional service that deal with this, we don't care to read. Right? Like, it doesn't give an explanation here. Why not? Because in the second and third cantos, fourth cantos, it's already been very clearly described exactly what it means. But all those technical things, devotees don't do it. I've given class in second canto. Devotees show up. Oh, you're giving class. Find out it's second canto. They leave. Oh, you don't understand? No, it's second canto. It's all this, technical stuff, And that's the exact stuff you need if you want to engage it all in Krishna service. Right? In other words, if you're brahmachari, walk out. If you're grihastha, this stuff's for you. Right? Brahmachari life's simple. Grihastha life's complicated. So here's complicated. Deal with it, right? That's the whole thing. That's what it's for. How to engage all those things. So here, Maharaj Chitraketu, he does all that very nicely, and we see he gets the result. He's the Lord of Vidyapurna Loka. But the main point is he goes back to Godhead. Indra is also performing his duties, but not so rigidly in connection with the Lord, not with that great faith in Guru. You see, he's always doing something stupid, insulting his Guru or insulting other great personalities. It means he's regularly doing that. Right? So then, what happens when it comes down to the two of them? Then it's going to be Chitraketu goes back to Godhead for his endeavor, and Indra stays here. Right? He chanted a mantra for 1 week. He has lordship of Vidyapurna Loka. Indra did 100 Ashrameda Yagyas, which is a big scene. And then he gets, how do you say, to be Indra. And, then everything else. Gets 1,000 eyes, ends up living inside of a lotus stem, gets the whole thing. I think he even, ends up as a pig. So he gets the whole package, the full Indra package. Right? But here, he just follows the order of Guru and all that, and it's done. It doesn't mean you're not using your intelligence to imply, but where does that intelligence come from? Even when we want to do well materially, where does the intelligence come from? Right? It comes from following the order of Guru and Krishna. That's where it comes. Then one can do so many things. So the devotee doesn't worry about the material, that's what he's gaining from it. That just comes. He worries that it's pleasing to Krishna. In other words, the same activity is being done, but the focus is not on how to make the money, but how to please Krishna. The money will come automatically. I'm trying to please Krishna by cooking. The quality of the cooking will come out the best it can. And if it wasn't so good today, less salt, more salt, tomorrow I'll adjust that. Why? Because I want to please Krishna. Not because I want to become so expert at this cooking. You know? Does that make sense? That's the point. Where the focus is, it doesn't change the technique. We think if we change the focus, we change the technique. No. You change the focus, you improve the technique, because your focus is on Krishna. Technique comes from Krishna. Intelligence comes from Krishna. Ability comes from Krishna. So if you're focused on Krishna, you'll do the best you can. If you don't focus on Krishna, then you have to worry about your karma. That's all. And then look at it. Bottom line, if you weren't a devotee right now, what job would you have as a karmi? What would you be living in? Would you have servants from Tarampur washing your clothes? You understand? Would you have marble floors? Right? Would you have air conditioning? All these different things. Or would you just be somewhere out there in the material nature, just like everybody else? Right? That's the whole point. We don't think like that. We think, oh, where's all things? Where's the facility? The facility devotees have now is far beyond what is before. Far beyond. It means that long building over there, that, you know, is a step up from what it was before. Before, you brahmacharis meant you know, lived on the veranda. Then you got a building. But one of those rooms is standard, 4 people in a room. If it's festival, 6 to 8. Right? Now, in one of those rooms that side, does anybody live with 6 to 8 people inside? Even 4 people inside. There's a good chance it's an extra room. You understand? Common bathrooms, everyone has their own bathroom. Sometimes I have 2 bathrooms in the house. You understand? Facility is there. Why? Because we're chanting, we're doing service to Krishna. This stuff just comes. You don't have to worry about it. You worry about doing your duties to please Krishna. That already includes the endeavor to do this. Right? But we take it, duty means doing something I don't want to do. That's the meaning of common. Right? And those who would follow, and human means, no, doing your duty is the value. Right? Humans, they do what they're supposed to. Animals, you have to train them. And even then, if they get a chance, they won't do it. So we have to be very careful to understand what is being said here. This is pointing out you don't have to worry about the material side. You perform your duties. And that duties already includes everything. The tendency is we don't make an endeavor to find out what duties are. We just don't. So therefore, we don't know what it means. Like that. Yeah. So here, simply by the influence of the mantra that's given by his spiritual master, following that very nicely for the spiritual master, we see all prosperity is there, though that's not what he's interested in. But he has it. And he uses it in the Lord's service. Any comments or questions? Yes. Do we have the mic thingy? all the way to the back. Back, hello, hello.
I was amazed by the rapidity of the progress of the aspirants in the Bhagavatam. Dhruva, 6 months, and he gets God to appear before him. And now Chitraketu, 1 week, and he's the king of the Vidyadharas. And I think he's going to get, as I recall, Shankarshan to appear before him in three weeks. I think it's something like that. So meanwhile, I'm a geriatric snail, and I'm just like, it's like, seems to be taking me forever. So what's the rub here? Why such rapidity of progress, and why do we go so slow that it seems like we're, like I said, a geriatric snail?
Like we're doing the moonwalk or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Looks like you're going forward, but we're actually going backwards. Okay. One is that someone like Dhruva Maharaj is something that they have that material drive. So he is a potential emperor of the universe. So he has that drive to it. So it's just that, you have that aspect. So you have that part. Second is that you're going to choose your strongest examples, because there's so many. There's billions of examples, good examples of all this working, but you choose the really exceptional, standing out ones, right? Kings all the time are having problem, with the family and other kings and stuff like that. But then we hear the story of Yudhishthira, right, which is just the most, then it catches the full attention. Then we think, okay, we get it, this can be done, right? My situation is not as difficult or not as stressful, or what I'm trying to get is not as much. I'm not looking for lordship over the universe. I would just be happy if somehow or another I could make things work in my own house, right? That kind of stuff. But that means that there's a possibility. The third thing is that much of the time we don't even actually understand what we have. Because we're dealing with it, we think we're not advancing, as we see from the prayers of the Acharyas, like the songs of the Acharyas, that they'll point out, like Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, he'll point out that he's written this amazing work on Lord Chaitanya, but at the end of each chapter, he's just taking that humble position and saying, I'm unqualified and this. But it's not that they're just saying that and then kind of looking up with that little smirk on their look to see if the ladies are smiling or anything, right? He's meaning that, because they're just dealing with what they're dealing, and they take the secondary aspects that's their absorption, that they're not really absorbed in the Lord. So then they'll distract it like that. So much of the time, we're actually developing much greater and much faster than we actually realize. That's why then we focus also ourselves on that primary aspect right there, and then it goes by quick enough, like that. Because the point is in one lifetime we could go back to Godhead, and the demigods are thinking, wow, this is great. Prabhupada said they're waiting in line to take birth within the devotee families. Right? Because it's just the time is so short that you can perfect yourself. Well, the demigod, they live so long, 71 cycles of the Mahayugas, and that's just, for these major demigods, and that's a trip, right? We're talking about, 100 years or less, within, a cycle. Let alone, how you say, what is it? The whole cycle is 4,300,000 years. So we're talking about 100 out of that. And they live for 72 of those. So like that, many times we don't see how it's going. Just like, let's say, the person who's driving the car then knows that progress is being made, but who's sitting in the back seat is always thinking nothing's happening, we're getting nowhere. So if we become aware of the indicators the knowledge we're getting, the attachment we're getting, these are the real indicators, right? And these are just secondary indicators. So we see as Chitraketu, even though he's very qualified, right, to be in his position, to manage the kingdom, and it doesn't say that his kingdom was having any difficulty, right? And he had 10 million wives. That's serious household management there. And then you have the country, right? You know, it's said that, you know, making the family work and an empire work both basically have about the same level of endeavor. So you take one empire and 10 million, you know, aspects of the family. So very qualified, right? But because of his attachment, he was unable to appreciate the spiritual aspect. So Angira Muni, it said Angira Muni came, but because of his attachment, he could only, you know, be a little pleasant and speak a little bit like this. But after his son died, then he brought Narad Muni, so now he was ready for devotional service. As Angira, okay, here's sage, they'll respect, they'll deal properly, they'll be pious, you know, discuss a little philosophy, but the actual idea of surrender and bhakti only came after some calamity. Then we see is now he's ready to hear. Thus, you also see so much of the time that calamities in devotees' lives, because for us, that's generally when we become serious, or at least it's an opportunity to become serious. Because we could get frustrated with material endeavor, and therefore be more open to devotional service. So when that little bit of understanding and detachment comes, and that's just a little bit, then devotional service can take root very nicely. It's not that devotional service is dependent upon it, it's that we won't allow the devotional service to function like that. We just get in the way. We just create, you know, we're how you say, when it comes to manufacturing anartas, we're good. You know, we have practice. So when that little bit of detachment and knowledge comes, then we can take it up. So that's the place to look. Is that going on? If that's going on, are we less attached to certain things than we were before? Maybe there's certain things we're more attached to, but look at the general picture. Before we'd have so many attachments in so many fields. Now it's probably fewer. Those fewer may be stronger, may not be stronger, but it's less. The range is less. What we're looking for is less. And so that's an effective devotional service. So we can see as the process is working. You know, and then we see around us others then they're able to be absorbed in Krishna and all that. And so we see devotees, you know, in their different situations, they're able to see Krishna in it. Maybe not the first day or the second day, but after a few days or a few weeks, they can see how it's beneficial in Krishna consciousness. So we can take inspiration there. So, does that make sense? So actually, we are advancing, but we don't necessarily understand how much we're advancing. Is that okay? Okay. Yes, please. Microphone over here, Janani Basapu.
Haribol.
Haribol. Haribol.
Thank you, Maharaj. In verse 33, it talks about how Chitraketu Maharaj, he controlled his intelligence and thus restricting his senses from sensitive engagements. He recovered suitable words with which to express his feelings. Now you're talking about primary and secondary. His feelings seem to be primary, and he's offering prayers to express his feelings. So if the prayers and his mantras are secondary, what is the case of the Maha Mantra? That's also a prayer. Would it become secondary?
It depends on the situation, because you have yes and you have no, both aspects. Is that you're dealing with, because Krishna being, everything is Krishna. So the nature of Krishna is present in everything. So when you see his nature in one thing, you can see, you can appreciate the nature. If you take one aspect of that picture that you're looking at, the complete picture is also there. So Krishna is complete. Anything expanding from is complete. So then if you take a situation, he's complete. But if you take part of that, it itself has that same completeness. So it depends on what you're looking at. So the name is non-different from Krishna. So it is Krishna. That one is chanting the name to gain something, that would be the secondary. But you're associating directly with the Lord with the chanting, so that's primary. And then our associating with the Lord, that's primary. Right? Does that make sense? Secondary will be things like this, the just facilities that come from it, or the technical points, he's fasting, only drinking water, controlling the intelligence, the senses. These will be the secondary aspects. So within this, you're seeing a few layers of them. So, and when we say his prayers, it means his feeling, of devotion. So then the feeling of devotion would be the primary in that aspect, and the prayers he's using to express them would be the secondary. Right? That he's offering prayers, that would be the primary, and that he's controlling the senses and intelligence, that would be the secondary. Right? And then he's controlling the senses and intelligence, that would be the primary, and then the forms of control of the senses, the forms of controlling the mind that he uses, like how he sits or the different techniques he uses or pranayama or whatever, that would be the secondary. Right? That he's doing that because Shastra recommends that would be the primary, that he is, engaging his body and everything, and to serve that would be the secondary. We see as you adjust it, the primary and secondary move with it. So it's just the context that's here. So in this context, it's his expression of devotion that will be the main thing. But when you're chanting the holy name, that is Krishna, that's the primary. That we're using our mouth, our tongue, using the ear, that's the secondary. Right? But that we, the soul, are absorbed in hearing and chanting the holy name, that's the primary. Right? Even you can take it that the name is primary, we're the secondary. Right? In that case, but actually the real thing is the affection between the two. That's complete. Because otherwise we just have the Lord, we have us. It's knowledge, but it's not really complete. It's complete when he's the Lord, we're his servant. And that relationship, that's what we're doing when we chant. That becomes that's the actual primary. And then the technique of chanting, we sit in one place, we walk, we sit in the temple, we go in a corner, we go out into the, outside where it's fresh, or whatever we have to do. Jump up and down, put a blanket over our head, sit there with one of those little spray guns and spray ourselves in the face every night. These are all secondary things we do so that we can chant. Right? And even where chanting is because of the relationship. So the primary, secondary aspects, it always shifts according to the context. That's why you say time, place, circumstance, because you have to be able to know what is the context, and then you get the full meaning. But if you can see the two of them and see Krishna, you can still get any benefit no matter where you apply it, but they'll be higher. Just like the discussion between Lord Chaitanya and Ramananda Rai. Discussing the same thing, but they're just going deeper, and they're shifting where the primary and secondary is. And therefore it gets deeper and deeper. Does that make sense? So does that work?
Something like, something like within Sambandha, you can get Sambandha Abhidaya and Prayojan.
Yes, just like that. And then within the Sambandha Abhidaya and Prayojan, you get Sambandha Abhidaya. So it's just unlimited how much you can get, because I'm doing something, I'm trying to get the knowledge, but having gotten the knowledge, which is still Sambandha Gyan, that's the goal of the Sambandha. And then within that I have the knowledge, that's the Sambandha of the Prayojana within Sambandha Abhidaya and Prayojan, and now I'm using it to please Krishna, that I'm going to use it in the relationship with Krishna. That would be the Prayojana of the Prayojana within the Sambandha. You know what I'm saying? So you can always take it finer. That's what the Acharyas are always doing, is that I come to a level of advancement. There's no such thing as I sit back and it's done, because then within that, now I apply it again. And then I refine it, and then I apply it again. That's how it goes on eternally. You know, so you have your gross, your main things, but then you get finer, 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 finer. So that can go on unlimitedly, because Krishna is always expanding, his energy is always expanding, so then it always works. And yes, so there's never any problem. And us ourselves, okay, we have certain qualities, we're limited, but Krishna's not. So the potential is unlimited. But how many things are we going to do? So then when we connect ourselves with the internal potency, which is unlimited, then the application of our limited amount of qualities, then it takes part in the unlimited pastime. And so then that's where we actually get our satisfaction. So that's the real thing we're looking for. These other things, they come along with it. But it's not about that. It's about the expression of the relationship. But because the expression is part of the process, it's not just the feeling of it. It's the endeavor itself, the abhideya, that's what gives the taste and the prayojana. Because of the relationship, you make the endeavor, you get the results. So it's that complete package. It's not that I'm chanting and I'm getting this nice feeling in chanting and that's the goal. No, that just happens. Chanting is a nice thing. The actual point is love for Krishna. And that expression of that love for Krishna, that's the real thing. So that's why it gets mentioned that as one is able to discriminate, to don't get distracted by self-satisfaction. Because otherwise, I'm doing devotional, this is nice, this is good, I like this. And then one becomes conditioned by that goodness, and then one doesn't see the need to further drive. But then here we see is that these devotees like Maharaj Chittaketu, or Prabhupada gave the example of Dhruva Maharaj, these others, they continue the drive. They're already getting so much benefit, but they continue because they know what their goal is. So they continue all the way to that. So if we have that same, we know developing love for Krishna is what we're trying to, then we continue, even though self-satisfaction is coming up, but that's just part of sambandha. It's just the situation we're in. It's not actually the prayojana we want. So if self-satisfaction can come by chanting, why wouldn't material facility come? That's even lower. Right? So that's natural. You know, and when we're talking here, material facility, we're talking about the pious stuff. You know, so therefore the impious stuff, that's real easy. You know, that's not a biggie at all. Does that make sense? So modern facility is even easier to get than Vedic facility. Because it's passion and ignorance is pretty low grade. But then, goodness, that's harder to get. But it comes so easily with chanting. And then there's situation within the transcendental platform. That we appreciate that. So, as pointed out, is that the devotees, let's say the devotee has a house. Technically, because the house is being used in devotional service, the house is spiritual. But it doesn't mean the devotee sees it as spiritual, even though it is. That's the covering of Prauda Maya, like on the Dham. This is the transcendental realm, but there's that covering of Prauda Maya that we may think, oh, it's India, it's hot, and all the pilgrims, and it's so noisy, and it's so this, and so that, and that's the Prauda Maya. That thin covering. But actually it's a spiritual world. So then it's a matter of us realizing. So even though the devotee, once he develops that shraddha, he is, and therefore practice, he is liberated. And everything he's working and using in Krishna's service is spiritual. Because the effect is giving is spiritual. It's still made from the external energy, but the effect is spiritual, like iron and fire. So it's not just we're iron and fire, everything we work with is iron and fire. And so we're actually on the spiritual platform, but we're still conditioned to think I'm not. So that's the, just like, let's say someone has been in prison and it's been a very, strong experience. But then when they get out of prison, then, they may be standing in a line somewhere and they hear some noise and then they get worried that they'll be attacked or someone's going to, stab them with a toothbrush or, something. But they're just in the line with other people, waiting to get a ticket for something. But because they're still conditioned, they still think in their old habits. Is that like that? Even though it's not necessary. I remember once it was funny. went to Los Angeles, and, after being in India for, about 6 years and that, you know how it is to get on a bus or a train. It's like if you don't make a serious endeavor, life or death endeavor, you don't get on, right? So there I am in LA, standing there waiting for the bus. There's myself and one other lady waiting to get on the bus, and we're maintaining our standard European spacing, right, But as soon as the bus stops and the door opens, just by habit, I just jam into the bus. And then the lady looks at me like, what's going on here? Where's the crowd? Where are the people? What's the rush, And I'm thinking, wow. Now that's conditioning, right? So, yeah, though there was no need, and the bus driver isn't about to go off without us, so I could have let the lady get on the bus and pay, and I get on and pay, and then, it works very nicely. But somehow or another, I thought, if I don't just jump, the bus is going to take off, right? So that's the conditioning, right? So even though we're in a liberated condition, we still think we're not. So then that's why we still address the secondary elements. One is that they can be engaged nicely in Krishna service as something, but two is because we still identify with them, we still look at them as important. Rather than their importance is their connection to Krishna. We give them importance on their own. He controls his intelligence and senses. Yes, that's a good thing to do. No, it's only useful because it's useful in Krishna consciousness. On its own, it's nice, but that doesn't mean it's important. Like that. Is that okay? Does that work? Okay. Jai. So we'll end here. Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Srila Prabhupada ki. Samaveta Bhaktivinanda ki. Jai Nitai Gaura Premananti.